Hey, tonight we're going to war. Not the kind with medals, victory speeches, or dramatic background music. This one's a disaster. A real one. The kind of mess that gets buried under decades of carefully edited documentaries and stern voiceovers trying to make incompetence sound brave. But we're going to peel that back, slowly, sleepily, uncomfortably. You're being deployed to North Africa. February 1943, the Battle of Kasserine Pass. Sounds exotic, maybe even scenic, right? It's not. It's where your military career ends before it even starts. If you're picturing epic tank battles and clean uniforms, forget it. You're about to be cold, wet, sandblasted, underfed, sleep-deprived, and utterly unprepared. That's if you're lucky enough to avoid getting shot, shelled, or run over by your own side. And just so you know, you're not playing the part of the war-hardened veteran. You're not the cunning general or the quiet hero with a flask and a 1,000-yard stare. You're just another replacement, a warm body in an itchy uniform, dumped into a theatre of war no one really understands, commanded by men who barely know where they are, and expected to hold your ground with a rifle that hasn't been cleaned properly since basic training. Good luck. Now, before you settle into this doomed campaign, maybe dim the lights, adjust your blanket, and pretend you're not already sweating in your foxhole. This won't be fast, it won't be fun, but it will be honest. And by the end, you'll understand why nobody makes war movies about this part. Let's get started. You're about to meet the desert, the draft, and a disaster called the US Army in 1943. You wake up choking on dust. Not poetic dust. Not a gentle sunrise haze. This is the kind of dust that gets in your teeth, your eyes, your lungs, your soul. You don't remember falling asleep, and technically you didn't. You passed out sitting up in the back of a rumbling, rusting army truck that smells like engine oil, feet, and the vague panic of 20 other guys who also have no idea what they're doing here. It's February, but don't let that fool you. North Africa doesn't do cosy. The nights are cold enough to make your bones whimper, and the days come with a sun that wants you dead. There's no humidity, just static misery. You've been in the country for less than 48 hours, and already your skin has started to peel in weird places. Your socks have fused to your feet, and you're pretty sure something bit you in the neck last night. You didn't scream. That would have required energy. The first thing no one tells you is that arrival isn't what it sounds like. You don't land like a hero, waving to smiling locals while swing music plays in the background. You get dropped off at a supply depot built out of tents, crates, and disillusionment. There's a sign in crooked English that says, 5th Army Supply, keep out, and it's stapled to a post that's already half snapped. The sign folds over as you watch. A corporal, who's only slightly older than you, but looks about 40, walks up and barks something that might have once been English. You nod automatically, even though you have no idea what he said. He slaps a canvas duffel into your arms, points vaguely toward a ridge in the distance, and mutters, "Try not to die today." Then he walks off. That's your briefing. You don't know it yet, but you've just entered the most poorly coordinated theatre the US Army has operated in during the entire war. Congratulations. This is North Africa, specifically the Tunisian campaign. Technically, you're supposed to be part of a Grand Allied operation to push the Axis forces out of Africa. In reality, you're a speed bump with a helmet. This is your welcome party. A broken down vehicle convoy, a lieutenant who hasn't stopped sweating since Casablanca, and a heat haze that makes the mountains look like they're breathing. The men you're with all have that same look. Confused, filthy, too tired to panic. Most of them are brand new. A few might have seen combat, but they're not talking about it. You don't ask. You get issued your gear. Issued is a strong word. You're handed whatever the supply guys can scrounge up. Your rifle has a serial number, but no bolt. Your boots are half a size too small, and came off a guy who probably didn't make it past Oren. You're missing a canteen, so someone gives you an empty Coke bottle and says, "Just fill it when you can." You don't laugh. Nobody laughs. That was serious. Your unit has been assigned to the front, although no one agrees on where the front actually is. One map says you're near the pass. Another says you're 20 miles south. One guy swears you're in Algeria. That guy is from Kentucky and has been hallucinating on quinine for 3 days, so maybe don't trust him. You try to get some orientation from your commanding officer, but he's busy arguing with a British liaison over a radio that only works when someone smacks it with a wrench. The liaison is yelling about panzers, and your CO keeps saying, "I thought we were holding that ridge," which isn't the kind of sentence that inspires confidence. Eventually, someone points and yells, "Move out!" which causes a flurry of disorganised movement, and several people dropping things. You fall in with a ragged column of GIs shuffling across rocky terrain under a sky that seems to be watching. No one knows what's waiting over the next hill. You're hoping it's a chow tent. It's not. The desert stretches ahead, beige and angry. There's no cover, just dry scrub, broken rocks, and the occasional burned out tank carcass rusting in the sun. You pass one. It smells like baked rubber and regret. A helmet sits half buried in the sand nearby. You keep walking. Morale is low. Not because you're scared of dying exactly. That part hasn't fully sunk in yet. It's more about the absurdity. The lack of information, the non-existent chain of command. The rumour that the German tanks have better engines than your trucks. Someone mentions Rommel. You've heard of him. The Desert Fox. Sounds almost cartoonish. Until you realise he's very real and very close. And you're not ready for him. Food is a can of meat paste and some crackers that taste like cardboard soaked in battery acid. You eat it while sitting on a rock, staring at the nothing. A guy next to you offers you a cigarette. You don't smoke, but you take it anyway. Because here, not smoking is considered weird, and being weird makes you a target. For jokes, for punches, for fate. When night comes, it isn't peaceful. There's no sunset magic, just darkness and a sudden drop in temperature that feels like nature slapping you for being optimistic. You try to dig a foxhole, but the ground is basically rock. So you settle for a shallow depression and hope nobody notices. You lie down, rifle across your chest, eyes open to the sound of distant gunfire. Not close enough to matter yet. Just close enough to remind you it's coming. Sleep doesn't happen. You just close your eyes and wait for something. Maybe morning, maybe artillery, maybe a miracle. It won't be a miracle. At some point, you hear movement. Boots on gravel, the clink of a helmet, hushed voices. Someone whispers a password. Someone doesn't respond. There's shouting. Then gunfire. Short, loud, sudden. You flatten yourself to the dirt and grip your rifle, forgetting that you never found the bolt. It wouldn't fire if your life depended on it, which it very well might. The next morning there's a new body nearby, wrapped in a tarp. No one talks about it. They just walk past it, eyes low, expressions blank. You do the same. Not because you don't care, because you can't afford to care too much. Not yet. You've only been here a day. Someone says you're moving out again. Toward the pass, the Kasserine Pass. Sounds important, like a place that will make headlines. You'll learn soon enough it's not a battle. It's a bottleneck. A trap. A lesson in how not to conduct modern warfare. But for now, it's just a name. You shoulder your gear, squint at the sun, and start marching. Again. Because that's what everyone's doing. Because orders, even stupid ones, are still orders. And because you haven't yet realised that most of the men around you won't make it to the other side of the valley. But you're about to find out. You didn't volunteer. Almost no one did. You were drafted, processed, shaved, issued a serial number, and told you were now part of the greatest military in the world. Whether you believed that depended on how much coffee the sergeant yelling in your face had consumed that morning. Spoiler, too much. Back home, you were just a guy. Maybe you fixed cars. Maybe you clerked at a drugstore. Maybe you were halfway through college, or halfway through getting fired from another job you didn't care about. Then one morning a letter showed up with your name printed like a death certificate. Greetings. You have been selected. You didn't feel selected. You felt trapped. There was no ceremony, no dramatic farewell. Just a bus, some paperwork, and a line of guys all trying to pretend they weren't terrified. You stood in your socks with 40 strangers, while a man with a clipboard looked you up and down like cattle. He poked your shoulder, nodded, and checked a box. That was your physical. You coughed once, and someone told you you'd make a fine rifleman. You never held a rifle before. Didn't matter. Basic training was supposed to prepare you. It didn't. It gave you blistered feet, a permanently misaligned spine, and a deep resentment for sandbags. You learned how to clean a weapon, march in step, and listen to grown men scream, move faster, at volumes that violated physics. You also learned how to dig a trench, peel potatoes, and fake like you were paying attention during lectures on field sanitation that only ever ended in dysentery. There were rumours the real training was happening somewhere else, maybe in the Pacific, maybe in England, but you weren't one of the lucky ones. You were going to Africa, a place no one knew how to pronounce, and no one could find on a map. Some guys thought you'd be riding camels. Others figured you'd be building airfields. Nobody said you'd be running from tanks through a desert hellscape with sand in places you didn't know could hold sand. The army gave you gear. A uniform, a helmet, a canteen, and a bag that smelled like mildew and crushed dreams. Everything was the wrong size. Your jacket hung like a shower curtain. Your trousers were tighter than betrayal. Your boots squeaked when you walked, which would have been funny if it weren't for the blisters the size of silver dollars forming before you even boarded the ship. That ship ride? Nobody talks about it. They just shake their heads and go quiet. You were packed in tight, like canned meat with anxiety issues. The air below deck was thick with sweat, diesel, and a soup of vomit from half the company who learned they weren't born to sail. You didn't sleep. You didn't eat much. You just prayed the boat didn't hit a mine or a torpedo, and if it did, you hoped it happened fast. Then came the landing. It wasn't a beach assault, not this time. Just a slow, fumbling disembarkation onto a rocky coast with too many crates and not enough clarity. Officers barked directions like they meant something, but the maps they carried were out of date and half the place names were spelled wrong. Your unit was rerouted 3 times before someone realised they'd lost an entire battalion. They were fine, mostly, just hungry, sunburned, and very, very annoyed. You started marching. Not because there was a plan, but because that's what soldiers do when no one has a clue. You marched through towns where kids stared, and locals sold lukewarm bottles of soda at criminal prices. You passed burned vehicles, broken roads, and fields of barbed wire that seemed more decorative than functional. Somewhere out there, the Germans were waiting. Or maybe watching. Probably both. Your commanding officer was new, but he pretended otherwise. He gave pep talks like they were written by someone who had never been scared in their life. "We're here to teach the Axis a lesson," he said once. That lesson was mostly about how unprepared you all were. You got your first briefing in a tent that leaned like a drunk against a sand dune. A sergeant pointed at a map with his knife and said something about holding the line near a place called Kasserine. You asked what holding the line meant, and he just said, "Don't die, that's the line." You didn't ask again. What no one told you was that the terrain wasn't just difficult. It was perfect for the enemy. Narrow passes, open plains, zero cover. Rommel could smell your weakness from across the ridge. He'd fought here before. You hadn't. That wasn't just an imbalance. That was a death sentence wrapped in a desert and sealed with incompetence. Even now, you're still adjusting to the new normal. Your tent collapsed in the wind last night, so you slept with your boots on and your head against a rock that might have been a landmine in a previous life. You woke up with ants in your shirt and 2 fewer rations than you were supposed to have. No one knows where the food went. You suspect Corporal Sanders. He looks too full for a guy surviving on mush. Your squad has started naming the lizards that run past during meals. One of them is called Frank. He's better at camouflage than anyone in your platoon. The guy next to you swears he heard gunfire last night. You tell him it was probably just the wind. It wasn't. You both know it. There's no training for this kind of war. No simulation for watching a friend trip and nearly detonate a forgotten shell. No handbook on how to react when a plane buzzes overhead and everyone hits the dirt because no one can tell if it's American or German. Friendly fire is just part of the experience now, like sunstroke or sand in your toothbrush. The worst part isn't the fear, it's the waiting. You sit for hours, sometimes days, in a hole with no bottom, staring at a horizon that never changes. You imagine you're anywhere else. A diner, a movie theatre, that weird house party where you first kissed someone who wasn't impressed by your haircut. Anything but this. Someone finally shouts for roll call. You all line up, weapons at the ready, uniforms stained with effort and failure. A name is called, no answer. Called again. Still nothing. No one says anything. No one has to. They just check the box, mutter something under their breath, and move on to the next. This is how it goes. The draft didn't ask if you were ready. The army didn't check if you were trained. You got lucky enough to survive basic, unlucky enough to be shipped here, and just dumb enough to believe it might all make sense eventually. You tie your boot tighter, slap your helmet down, and stare at the officer trying to explain a new objective with a stick and a sheet of paper that keeps blowing away in the wind. He yells over the sound of trucks and gunfire. You catch about half of it. The half you understand tells you everything you need to know. You're headed to the front again. And this time, Rommel isn't guessing. He's already moving. Fast, with tanks, with artillery, with every advantage. You adjust your pack. Your gear feels heavier than yesterday. Probably isn't. Your legs feel slower. Probably are. You look around. Half the guys here won't be tomorrow. That's not a guess. That's math. The desert stretches ahead. The Kasserine Pass is just over that ridge, and your dumb luck has officially run out. Before bullets fly and tanks roll, before you're sprinting across a mine-laced ridge, trying not to soil yourself, you get to experience the slow, bureaucratic nightmare that is army life. No glory, no action, just paper, protocol and pain. The kind of pain that comes from wearing the wrong boots for 18 hours a day and being told to smile about it. You spend your days waiting for orders, for chow, for trucks that never show up. And when they do, they're missing half the supplies and filled with replacement parts for equipment you don't actually have. Logistics is a word officers use to make incompetence sound official. We're working on the logistics, they say, while you boil in your uniform and try not to pass out next to the sandbags. Your boots are too small. You were told to break them in during training, but that never really happened. What actually happened is that they broke you. The leather is stiff, the insoles feel like cardboard dipped in regret, and the soles are held together by something that resembles string but could just be dried sinew. You tried swapping with another guy, but his pair was worse. And now you've got a left boot that's technically yours, and a right boot that once belonged to a guy named McNeil who was shipped to Italy last week. If you ever see him again, you might punch him. Every step is an act of defiance against your own body. Your blisters have blisters. Your toes are covered in a patchwork of moleskin, torn socks, and prayer. You've bled into your laces more than once. You stop telling the medic because he just shrugs and hands you another foot powder tin that expired in 1939. No one tells you how loud army life is, not in battle, just in general. Trucks backfire. Radios screech. Generators groan like dying whales. Officers yell constantly, usually about things they don't understand. There's always a hammer pounding something somewhere, even though nothing ever seems to get fixed. And there's always a private named Bill whistling the same 3 bars of the same song over and over again until someone threatens to throw him in a latrine. You do a lot of marching. Not for distance, for no reason. A corporal decides the company needs to stay sharp, which is code for I'm bored and I outrank you. So you all march in circles, with full packs, under a sun that's actively trying to kill you. You pass the same cactus 4 times. It starts to look like it's laughing. Everything involves paperwork. Everything. You want rations? Fill out a request. You want extra ammo? Fill out a request. You want to report that your foxhole collapsed because of a land turtle the size of a suitcase? Fill out a request. And then wait. Wait for the form to go up the chain, get lost, reappear, be sent back down with the wrong name, and then get denied because we're experiencing shortages. Always shortages. The food is mostly beige. Beige paste, beige crackers, beige meat in beige cans that clink when you shake them. You get C rations labelled beef and vegetables, but it might as well say chunk mystery in wet sadness. You eat it cold, crouched on a rock, using a spoon that bent during your last attempt to open a jam tin. The jam wasn't even sweet, just red. Probably. There's no privacy, none. Not when you eat, not when you sleep, not when you attempt to write a letter home and get interrupted by someone loudly describing a rash they've developed in places you didn't ask about. You pee next to the guy you just met yesterday, and you both pretend it's not weird. It's weird. Hygiene is optional and mostly theoretical. You get issued a bar of soap, but water is for drinking, not cleaning, and no one's risking their ration to scrub armpits. You develop smells. New smells. Some guys name them. There's an odour in your unit called chow foot, and no one will admit to owning it. Mail call is the one time people perk up. You gather around like it's Christmas. Most of the time, there's nothing. When there is, it's a letter from someone's mother, or a girlfriend slowly drifting into the just friends zone via increasingly shorter notes. Some guys get care packages, cookies, socks, magazines. You got a postcard once. It was bent and smudged and mostly illegible, but you kept it because it reminded you that somewhere there's a world without this. Leadership is a lottery. Your sergeant has two modes, yelling and muttering. He carries a clipboard everywhere, even though he never writes on it. He talks about his time in Panama like it was the crucible of modern warfare, but mostly he just eats first and takes the driest tent. Your lieutenant is fresh from officer candidate school, looks 12 and gets lost walking to the latrine. He keeps trying to give motivational speeches that end with someone coughing awkwardly. You try to stay busy. You clean your rifle. You repack your gear. You write letters you never send. You practice taking apart a field radio you'll probably never use. You sit and stare at a ridgeline for hours, convinced the enemy is behind it, even though you've been told a dozen times they're still a day's march away. You don't believe it. Occasionally, you're told to dig. Trenches, latrines, vehicle pits. No explanation, just dig. You dig through rock, roots, and once a buried crate full of rusted tin helmets and a rat skeleton. You keep digging. Because digging means you're not being yelled at. Yet. Time moves weirdly here. Mornings feel like months. Lunch doesn't exist. Dinner is just the same as breakfast, but slightly warmer. You don't track days anymore. Just events. The time the ammo truck caught fire. The time someone fell asleep standing up during a security shift. The time a camel wandered into camp, and 3 guys tried to ride it before it kicked Private Allen straight into a tent pole. There's talk of an offensive coming. Everyone's heard different things. Some say we're moving in to flank the Germans. Others say the British already took the pass. Someone claimed Rommel's dead. He's not. You know he's not. You don't know much, but you know that guy's alive and probably smiling. The night before the move, you're told to get some rest. You try. You lie on your bedroll, staring up at stars that look fake, because nothing this beautiful should exist in a place this miserable. You hear someone snoring, someone whispering, someone praying, someone trying not to cry. You do none of these. You just lie there and listen. Tomorrow, they say, you'll finally see action. But the truth is, action has already started. It started when you were drafted, when you were shipped overseas, when you realised the army isn't built for efficiency, it's built for movement. And now you're moving straight into a mess. Your boots still don't fit. Your pack is still too heavy. Your rifle was cleaned, but it doesn't care. You close your eyes for maybe an hour. When you wake up, you're already sweating. No bugle, no speeches. Just more orders, more shouting, more dust. You line up with the others. Adjust your helmet. Cinch your belt. And walk straight into the next mistake. This is your rifle, the M1 Garand, the standard issue miracle of American engineering, according to the pamphlet you were handed during basic training. It's semi-automatic, gas-operated .30 or .6 caliber and makes a satisfying ping sound when it ejects its last empty clip, which everyone says is iconic, but no one tells you might get you killed. The first time you held it, it felt solid. Heavy, but solid. Like it was built for something real. Not sleek, not elegant, just brutal, American, and indifferent. You learn to take it apart and put it back together like a ritual. Disassemble, clean, reassemble, pretend you understood how gas systems work, then hope you didn't lose a spring in the sand. Now it's yours, assigned to you like a bunk number or a skin condition. You've cleaned it more times than you've eaten a hot meal. You've oiled it, polished it, dry cycled it until your thumbs bled. And you still don't trust it. Not really. Not when it matters. The thing is, the M1 works great in theory. On a firing range, when it's 68 degrees and sunny, and you're being yelled at by a sergeant who believes screaming improves accuracy. But in North Africa? In wind that throws sand in your face like a schoolyard bully? In temperatures that shift from Arctic to hellfire in a matter of hours? It gets cranky, the bolt jams, the gas port clogs. Sand gets into everything, even places you didn't think had openings. You clean it, but it doesn't matter. The sand always wins. You wrap it in rags, doesn't help. You sleep with it under your body like a desperate prom date, still gets jammed the next morning. And then there's the thumb. You know the one. M1 thumb. Every guy gets it. You're loading a clip into the chamber, your fingers move just a second too slow, and bam, that bolt slams shut like it's mad at you personally. Congratulations, you now have a blood blister the size of a coin and a deep hatred for 1930s weapon design. No one warns you about the weight either. At just under £10, it doesn't sound like much. Until you've carried it for 16 miles through uneven ground while wearing a pack and dodging rumours of mines. The strap digs into your shoulder. The front sight chews at your ribs. You can't sling it comfortably. You can't put it down. It's an extension of your suffering now. You're also responsible for it. Deeply, painfully responsible. You lose your rifle. They don't give you another. They give you a shovel and a look that says, you better start digging your own replacement. It's your lifeline, your burden, your poorly machined best friend. You don't love it. You just know it better than most people at this point. And let's talk about that ping. When your 8-round clip empties, the M1 makes a high-pitched metallic ring as the clip ejects upwards and outwards like it's proud of itself. It's charming in a vacuum. It's suicide in a firefight. Because now everyone within earshot, including the guy behind the MG42, knows you're out of ammo. Some guys try to muffle it. Stick a finger over the port. Tape a bit of cloth to dull the sound. Doesn't always work. And if it does, you might just end up with a jam instead. Great trade-off. Silence or functionality. You get to pick one. Usually too late. The rounds themselves are unforgiving. Recoil isn't brutal, but it's there. You feel it in your shoulder, your teeth, your bad dreams. Accuracy? Depends on you. And wind. And dust. And how badly your arms are shaking. Firing prone helps, but good luck finding flat ground that isn't already full of ants or other people trying not to die. Malfunctions are common enough that you stop reacting with surprise. Double feed, tap, rack, swear, stovepipe, shake it out, yell a bit, pretend it didn't happen. Slam fire. If you're lucky, it shoots. If you're unlucky, it shoots when you're not ready. If you're really unlucky, it doesn't shoot at all, and now you're trying to clear the chamber while your squad is already moving. Some guys fantasize about carbines, lighter, easier to carry, but they don't hit as hard. Others dream about enemy weapons. The German rifles are bolt action, yes, but deadly and durable. Plus, they don't ping. You can't switch. You're stuck with this. And you better act like you're grateful. The manuals say the M1 can take a beating. And maybe it can. But the problem is, so can you. And at some point, you can't tell if you're carrying it, or it's carrying you, dragging your morale down one jam at a time. You sleep with it. You eat next to it. You check it more often than you check your own body. You field strip it blindfolded. Not because anyone told you to, but because if it fails when you need it, that's it. You get one shot, maybe two, and then you're crawling in the dirt, trying to remember which pouch you put your spare clip in. Most guys don't talk about their rifle like it's a person, but you do. Quietly. When no one's around. Not with affection, just familiarity. You don't say things like, good girl, or don't fail me now. You say things like, just once, please, or, if you jam again, I swear to God. There's a training film they showed you once. Black and white, clean uniforms, clear skies. A smiling narrator explaining how the M1 would win the war. You think about that film sometimes. You wonder if the narrator ever fired one outside a studio. You wonder if he's alive. You do what you can. You oil it daily. You brush out the sand. You load carefully. You watch your thumb. You pretend this 8-shot semi-auto nightmare is going to keep you alive when things go bad, which is probably sometime tomorrow. No one says it out loud, but everyone's thinking the same thing. This rifle is good enough. Until it isn't. And when it isn't, you better be faster than the guy aiming back at you. You load a clip. 8 rounds, a deep breath, a familiar weight, the sun's coming up again, another day closer to the pass, and you're still hoping the damn thing doesn't jam. Technically, someone's in charge. On paper, he's a lieutenant. In the field, he's a guy with too many pockets and no working compass. His map is folded wrong, stained with coffee, and about 3 weeks out of date. He says words like objective, flank, and command structure, with the confidence of someone who just read the glossary of a field manual and forgot to turn the page. He's new. Not just to war, but to life outside the officer's mess. His boots are cleaner than yours, his helmet still fits the way it was designed, and he talks about making a difference, like it's something that hasn't been shot full of holes yet. You can see the hope still clinging to his uniform like lint. You don't have the heart to tell him that hope isn't standard issue. He tries. That's the worst part. He really tries. He gathers the platoon under a tarp nailed to a broken truck and points at the map like it's going to obey. We're positioned here, he says, tapping a location that's been occupied by Germans since Tuesday. We'll move along this ridge, he continues, drawing a line through what you know is a minefield, and we'll set up a forward observation post right here. That spot, according to every private within earshot, is currently hosting a machine gun nest and 2 angry snipers. Nobody corrects him. What's the point? If you speak up, you get told to fall in line. If you're right, you just made the officer look stupid, which earns you jobs like latrine detail and overnight sentry duty near the ammo dump. So you nod, pretend the plan makes sense, and start mentally writing your last will on the back of a ration label. Navigation is more of a suggestion than a science here. The terrain doesn't match the maps. The roads on the paper are either bombed out, flooded, or imaginary. Entire villages are listed in the wrong place or spelled like someone sneezed halfway through writing. And coordinates? Great idea in theory. In practice, you have guys arguing over whether 34 Pont de Gran means north or nighttime. You rely on landmarks, big rock, burnt truck, that tree shaped like a question mark. And when that fails, you just follow whoever's walking in front of you and pray they're not as lost as you are. Which they usually are. At one point, your lieutenant orders a recon patrol west. You go, 10 guys, 3 rifles that work, 1 guy with binoculars that have a crack running through the lens. You walk for miles. You don't find the enemy. You do find a French goat that stares at you like it's seen some things. You return after sundown. The lieutenant's first question isn't whether you saw Germans, it's why you're wet. You tell him about the stream. He didn't know there was a stream. It's on the map. He didn't see it. You won't say anything else. He tries to build rapport. He uses your first name like your buddies. You okay, Tom? He asks after a long march. Your name isn't Tom. You nod anyway. Later someone does call him out for confusing names. He apologises, says he'll do better. Next day he forgets the medic's name and refers to him as Doc, which would be fine if the guy hadn't been replaced last week. Nobody tells him. Orders come down from higher up, filtered through so many layers of misunderstanding that they sound more like riddles than commands. Advance to Grid 4 and hold the perimeter. Grid 4 doesn't exist. Establish contact with Bravo Company. They're 30 miles east and already under fire. Avoid unnecessary engagement. There's no such thing as necessary when the tanks are already moving. At one point, the lieutenant tries to rally morale. He climbs onto a crate and starts quoting something from Churchill. The wind takes the middle part. Someone coughs, someone else lights a cigarette. By the time he finishes, 3 guys have wandered off to check the radio, and someone snuck off to finally use the bathroom behind the burnt-out jeep. He steps down like he didn't notice. To be fair, he's not a bad guy. He's just in the wrong place. Wrong war, wrong time. He wasn't trained for this. Not really. Leadership school gave him theory. Platoon tactics, radio protocol, decision-making under pressure. But none of that prepared him for the night. Private Andrews stepped on something and vanished in a flash of light and dirt. None of that helps when you have to order guys to walk into fire, because the alternative is staying still and waiting to die. He sleeps in the same dirt, eats the same rations, carries the same weight. But it's different for him, because he's supposed to know what's going on. And he doesn't. Not really. Every decision he makes, he has to pretend it's deliberate. Even when he's flipping a mental coin and hoping it doesn't land on mass casualty incident. You can see it wearing on him. The circles under his eyes. The way his hand trembles slightly when he checks his watch. He's stopped shaving. His collar's always crooked now. And when he thinks no one's looking, he stares at the map like it's personally betrayed him. But you still follow him. Not because you trust his brilliance, but because he's trying. Because someone has to stand at the front and make the call, even if it's the wrong one. And because the only thing worse than a clueless officer is no officer at all. The pass is still ahead. The enemy is moving. And your unit is somewhere in between, guided by a map, a compass that doesn't point north anymore, and a man who's faking confidence so hard it might actually kill him. You fall in behind him. Because that's what you do. And because the next disaster is already waiting. You thought desserts were just hot, maybe dry, maybe a little windy. You didn't realise the desert is an actual living thing, and it hates you personally, not generally, not symbolically, specifically you. It starts the moment you step off the truck. The sun isn't just overhead, it's above, around, and inside your uniform. You didn't know cloth could hold heat like this. Your helmet becomes a mobile oven, and your sweat evaporates before it can drip. You're dehydrated before you even feel thirsty, then you feel thirsty, then you feel dizzy. Then someone tells you to hydrate, like you're hoarding extra water in your pockets. The army gives you a canteen, aluminum, hot to the touch. You pour a little out and it steams. You drink it anyway, because lukewarm is a luxury. Most of the time it's hot enough to make tea, but you don't have tea. You have powdered lemon drink mix that tastes like sadness and floor cleaner. So you drink straight water and pretend you don't notice the metallic aftertaste or the vague smell of iodine. The sand isn't soft. It's not the beach. There's no surf, no umbrellas, no tan lines. Just grit, rocks, and little bits of pulverised everything. It gets everywhere. Into your boots, into your socks, into places you didn't think were physically accessible. You eat it, you breathe it, you sleep with it. You could rinse out your underwear in boiling water, and it would still crunch when you put it back on. Wind picks up mid-afternoon, doesn't cool you down, just lifts the sand and throws it sideways at your face like a blindfolded executioner. It gets in your eyes first, then your ears, then under your fingernails. A guy near you tries to cover his face with a scarf. It gets ripped off in 3 seconds. The only real defence is closing your eyes and pretending this is all a dream you had after bad rations. And the nights. You think maybe they'll be better. Cooler. They are. But not in a pleasant way. It's not refreshing. It's punishment in a different format. You lie on the ground, teeth chattering, wrapped in a blanket that smells like a wet dog inside a mouldy tent. Your breath fogs the inside of your helmet. The same helmet that tried to cook you 12 hours ago. You've got one jacket. It's about as insulated as a soggy paper bag. You wear all your layers at once and you're still shaking. The guy next to you uses an extra pair of socks as gloves. He says he can't feel his fingertips. You say it builds character. He doesn't laugh. There's no consistency. Mornings are crisp enough to crack your joints. Midday bakes the skin off your nose. Evening feels like standing inside a tomb. Every hour, your body gives up trying to regulate and just picks a temperature at random. You're either sweating through your shirt or curling into a ball to keep your kidneys from freezing. Then comes the rain. Yes, it rains here. Not often. But when it does, it's biblical. No warning. Just clouds, thunder, and a sudden deluge that turns dust into sludge and roads into rivers. Your foxhole? Now it's a pond. Your sleeping bag? A sponge? Your rations? Floating somewhere east of where you last saw them. The mud doesn't stick to your boots. It eats them. You take one step, and the desert tries to steal your foot. Your socks soak through. Your gear doubles in weight. A guy in your squad slips and dislocates his shoulder. He spends the night lying on a tarp, swearing at the sky and calling it a coward. There's no shelter. Tents collapse in the wind. Trucks get stuck. Tarps blow away. One time you tried to build a lean-to with ration crates. It lasted 12 minutes before a gust sent it tumbling across the ridge like a sad kite. Sunburn becomes a permanent condition. The back of your neck feels like it's been basted in acid. Your lips crack, peel, then crack again. Someone gave you lip balm once. You lost it. You still think about it sometimes, like an ex. You try wearing goggles, but they fog up instantly. Sunglasses? Lost in week 1. You shade your eyes with your hand like an old-timey explorer. Except there's nothing noble about it. You're just squinting through grit while your sweat stings open cuts. The insects are worse than the heat. Flies hover like they're waiting for your obituary. Beetles skitter into your boots at night. Spiders show up in your gear like they've been assigned to your squad. One guy got stung by something and hasn't stopped limping since. No one knows what it was. The medic just shrugged and offered him a cigarette. The medics don't pretend anymore. They carry bandages, iodine, and enough morphine to kill a mule. No one asks for help unless it's serious. If your toenail falls off, you tape it back on. If your foot turns purple, you walk it off. If your eyes swell shut from sand and exposure, someone guides you until you can sort of see again. No one sleeps well. The desert isn't quiet. It groans. Wind against metal. Distant tank engines. The rattle of something that may or may not be a snake. You lie awake listening, half praying for silence, half afraid of what silence means. When it goes quiet, someone usually doesn't wake up. And through all of it, you're expected to function. March, dig, fire, obey. It doesn't matter that your lips are bleeding, your skin's flaking off, and your rifle feels like it weighs more than your body. The desert doesn't care, and neither do the orders. You stop noticing the smell. Yours, the camp's, the guy next to you. It all blends into one continuous cloud of heat and grime and fabric rot. Showers are a myth. Wet wipes were never issued. Deodorant? Laughable. You wipe down with a sock, change into a shirt that's just a different flavour of dirty, and call it a win. You used to check the weather. Back home, that mattered. Here, there's only one forecast, suffering, with a chance of shrapnel. Eventually, your skin adjusts. Sort of. It doesn't hurt less. You just get used to it hurting. That's the secret. No one thrives out here. They endure. Or they break. Or they disappear. And no one talks about it. The pass is still ahead. Every mile closer, the sun burns hotter. The sand blows harder. The cold cuts deeper. You think maybe the terrain will improve? It won't. The desert doesn't get easier. It just waits. Sleep isn't rest. It's retreat. You don't go to bed, you collapse. Usually face down, sometimes curled around your rifle, sometimes just in whatever position gravity chooses when your body finally gives up. Nobody says goodnight, they just stop talking, and breathing evenly, if they're lucky. There's no mattress, no pillow, no warmth, unless you count the kind that comes from 2 days of unwashed body heat, trapped under a wool blanket that smells like mould and engine grease. You build a nest out of spare clothing, used ammo tins, whatever rags you haven't repurposed as bandages. If you're lucky, your foxhole is dry. If you're not, you're floating. The ground doesn't cooperate. It's either rock, roots, or soft sand that shifts every time you move. You dig down to find firmness and hit more dust. You try lying on your pack, but the metal frame stabs you like it's offended. Eventually, you settle for flat on your back, staring up at a sky so clear it feels like it's watching. Then come the noises. Scorpions are a thing, not metaphorically. Actual scorpions. Black or beige or invisible until they're inside your boot. You were warned about them once by a guy who thought he was being funny. He said, "If you feel something crawling, don't move. It's already too late." That joke gets less funny after dark. So every night, you shake your boots out, tap them against a rock, shine a flashlight in. then still find yourself jamming a finger inside with the silent hope that tonight isn't the night something stings you into early discharge. Bugs crawl over you while you sleep. At first, you flinch, then you swat. Eventually, you just accept it. Some of them bite, most of them just explore. You wake up with tracks across your chest and a new appreciation for evolution's cruel imagination. The air cools. Fast. 1 hour you're sweating, the next your breath fogs. Your blanket does nothing. You wear your jacket over your uniform, your shirt over your jacket, your hat inside your helmet, and you still shiver so hard, your teeth click. The guy next to you hums to stay warm. You tell him to shut up. Not because he's wrong, just because you're both miserable. Artillery doesn't sleep. Not yours, not theirs. At any hour, day or night, the sky might rip open with a sound like a giant tearing sheet metal in half. It starts as a whistle, then a shriek, then a boom that knocks dust loose from your helmet strap. You hit the dirt instinctively. Doesn't matter if you're mid-sleep or mid-sentence. Sometimes it lands close. Close enough to feel the ground jump. Sometimes it lands somewhere else, and you pretend it was far enough. You don't get out to check. You just close your eyes tighter and hope the next one finds someone luckier than you. Dreams change here. When they come at all, they're not dreams. They're reruns. Training exercises gone wrong. Familiar voices saying unfamiliar things. Faces that blend together. Explosions that don't end when you wake up. You dream of home, but only in pieces. A meal, a doorway, the sound of your mother turning a page in a book. Then it cuts to fire, sand, screams. You wake up sweating, not from heat, but from the kind of fear that doesn't leave when the sun rises. Sometimes you hear someone talking in their sleep. Sometimes you hear someone crying. No one says anything. It's normal. What isn't normal is waking up and realising someone's missing. Not dead. Not wounded. Just gone. Their gear's still there. Rifle's still leaning. But they're not. Maybe a latrine run. Maybe they walked too far out. Maybe they cracked. You don't ask. The worst nights are the ones you don't sleep at all. You're assigned watch. 2 hours. Alone. Or with someone half asleep and unhelpful. You sit in the dark, eyes peeled for silhouettes that might be Germans or shadows or tricks of your starving brain. Every minute feels like a dare. Blink too long, and someone might not wake up. You whisper to yourself. Not prayers, just reminders. Your name, the date, the last thing you ate, something to keep you tethered, something to prove you're still here. Then the flare goes up. White light. Sudden. Blinding. For one frozen second, the entire desert is illuminated like a flashbulb from hell. You see everything. Every wrinkle in the dirt. Every rusted shell casing. Every man frozen mid-crawl. Then darkness slams back, harder than before. No gunfire. Not yet. Just a test. Someone probing. Your hand grips your rifle tighter. Your finger slips into the trigger guard. Your breathing goes shallow. You stare into nothing. And you wait. The artillery comes later. Maybe. Maybe it never comes. Maybe it was just nerves. Maybe it was Rommel again, reminding you he knows where you sleep. Eventually someone taps your shoulder. Time's up. You crawl back into your hole. Your blanket is colder than before. Your body aches like it worked a full shift at a meat grinder. You close your eyes, knowing they'll open again in an hour. Or not at all. There's no dreaming this time, just black. And that's a relief. When the sun starts to rise, no one celebrates. It just means movement. March orders. More heat, more distance. You roll up your blanket, shake the scorpions out of your boots again, and start wondering if maybe today's the day your luck ends. You slept, technically. You're more tired than before. And the pass is still ahead. You wake up face down in sand. Again. There's a rock pressing into your cheekbone. Your mouth tastes like burlap and regret. And your left leg is numb because sometime during the night your pack slid down and decided to compress your circulation into a science experiment. You stretch, sort of. Something in your lower back pops. Might have been your spine. Might have been a scorpion. Doesn't matter. First thought of the day? Food. Not because you're hungry in any meaningful way. You stopped being hungry days ago. It's more like a timer. Your stomach doesn't growl anymore. It just reminds you it still exists. That it still technically functions. That maybe today you'll put something inside it that doesn't taste like warm tin. Breakfast, if you can call it that, starts with a search. You check your pack. Not for something new. There's no new. Just to confirm that yes, you still have the same bent can of meat hash and the cracker box that's been stepped on, sat on, and used as a makeshift shovel at least once. You peel open the tin. Beef and vegetable stew, the label says, as if those words haven't given up all meaning. You dig in with a dented spoon that you've been carrying like it's sacred, and it tastes exactly the same as it always does, like metal, sadness, and the vague whisper of beef that died of old age. The vegetables are technically present. Cubes of something that might be potato, or maybe hardened paste-coloured yellow for morale. It's lukewarm, even though you left the can out in the sun to heat. That just made the oil separate and rise to the top like a warning sign. You chew slowly, not because you're savouring it, but because chewing makes it last longer and keeps your jaw from locking up. A guy across from you finishes his tin without swallowing. You watch him mechanically rotate spoon to mouth like he's fueling a machine that doesn't want to run anymore. He doesn't look up. Nobody does. There's a packet of crackers in your kit. 3 of them. They crumble when you touch them, and when you eat them, they dry out your mouth like chalk. You chew, swallow, cough, and reach for your canteen. The water inside tastes like rust. It's been sitting in that metal container for days. It's warm, borderline soup temperature. But you drink it anyway, because the alternative is not drinking. And that ends with your name on a clipboard no one wants to carry. Sometimes someone pulls out instant coffee powder. Not enough to make coffee, just the powder. They dump it on their tongue, let it dissolve slowly. It burns a little. It keeps them awake. Maybe. You tried it once. Tasted like battery acid. Worked for maybe 10 minutes. Then you crashed harder than the Jeep that flipped in week 1 and is still being used as a latrine wall. There's sugar in the kit, if it wasn't stolen. If it didn't melt into a solid brick months ago. You chip at it with your knife like a prisoner trying to escape through a cement wall. You get a few grains. They dissolve on your tongue and remind you of donuts you once had on a sidewalk cafe 3 lifetimes ago. You let that memory sit for a second, then you bury it. Some mornings, someone lights a fire. Not for warmth, just to heat the can enough so the grease doesn't congeal. That fire attracts everyone like moths. 10 guys standing around a mess tin like it's a campfire from a movie. Nobody speaks. Just the scrape of spoons and the sizzle of aluminum pretending to be cookware. Then there's the cigarette. Always a cigarette. You don't smoke. Or you didn't. Now it's not about pleasure. It's about ritual. about something to do with your hands while your stomach tries to figure out how to metabolize preserved despair. You light it with a matchbook that's gone soft from humidity, or wind, or the curse of 1,000 supply clerks. The cigarette doesn't taste good. It tastes like scorched paper and the inside of a truck tire. But it cuts through the aftertaste of the stew. That counts as a win. Nobody talks during breakfast. No one has the energy. There's the occasional cough, the clink of a spoon against tin, the rustle of someone's pack as they search for the one edible item left, usually raisins that taste like tar. Someone tries to offer a joke. It dies halfway out of their mouth. One guy hums, off-key, something slow and tuneless. Everyone ignores it. Nobody stops him. You finish your meal. You stare into the empty tin like it might answer a question you forgot how to ask. Then you wipe the spoon on your sleeve, close your canteen, and pack everything up again. Because it doesn't matter that it's all empty. You still carry it. Because that's the rule. Trash gets buried, technically. Mostly it just gets shoved under a rock or tossed in the latrine pit. Some guys collect the paper wrappings, keep them, little labels and cigarette boxes. Proof that something happened, that someone issued something, that you didn't just imagine the whole thing. There's no dessert, no second cup, no refill, just the taste of tinned meat in the back of your throat and a thin coat of ash clinging to your teeth. Then the voice comes. Gear up. Same voice every morning. Same words, different direction. You stand slowly. Everything hurts, but you're used to that. Your boots creak. Your knees don't. Your pack slides up your spine like a punishment. You shoulder your rifle, you stretch, you spit. You glance at the sunrise and it doesn't feel symbolic, and then you march. You've heard the name, even if you didn't know how to pronounce it right away. Rommel, the desert fox. It sounds like a villain from a comic book, or some high society nickname for a guy who drinks brandy and plays chess with generals. He's neither. He's real. He's close. And he's not playing. You don't get much intel out here. Most of what you hear is second hand. From guys who heard it from guys who heard it from someone with a patch and a clipboard. But Rommel, his name moves fast. Faster than trucks. Faster than orders. When someone says he's moving east, nobody asks for coordinates. They just get quiet. The fox isn't a nickname. It's a warning label. You won't see him. You won't hear him. You'll just wake up one morning to the sound of tanks where tanks aren't supposed to be. And by the time you check your rifle, you're already flanking a position that doesn't exist anymore. They say he doesn't sleep, that he moves faster than his own command staff, that he reads terrain like other men read street signs, that he wins battles before his men fire a shot. You want to laugh at that? You don't, because nothing out here works like it's supposed to, and somehow he does. His troops are different. German, yes, but different. Quieter. More efficient. Their tanks don't stall. Their trucks don't fall apart the second you hit a bump. Their supply lines don't vanish into a bureaucratic haze. And their uniforms, somehow clean. It's infuriating. You've been wearing the same shirt for 6 days, and it smells like despair. He's been here longer than you. Knows the desert better than your maps do. While you're being briefed with hand gestures and vague hope, he's already planned 3 fallback points and a pincer move. You're chasing coordinates. He's reading the ground. The higher-ups say you're supposed to disrupt his supply chain. You're told this as you load your rifle and try to remember which way north is. Your lieutenant points at a crumpled map with a coffee ring covering half of Tunisia and says, "We'll cut him off right here." No one believes it. because by the time your squad gets to right here, Rommel's already pulled back, looped around, and hit another unit so hard their commander doesn't have a face anymore. And then he's gone. Left behind some empty ammo crates, maybe a burned half-track, maybe a note if he's feeling cheeky. Sometimes you find his calling card, perfect tyre tracks in sand, almost artistic, curving around your position like he was close enough to see you, but decided you weren't worth it yet. Those are the worst. Not because you were spared, but because now you're waiting. The brass call him bold, audacious. They use words like unorthodox and unpredictable. You have a better word, problem. He's a problem. One that command can't solve, and one you can't shoot until he's already finished winning. You've never seen his face. Just a blurry photo passed around a campfire. Tight collar. Cap tilted forward. Smile like someone who knows something you don't. You stare at it too long and start to feel like he's watching you back. His men don't waste ammo. You learned that the hard way when 2 of yours got picked off during a patrol, and no one heard the shots. Just bodies hitting dirt and silence. You expected yelling, motors, the usual noise. Instead, nothing. Just the sound of the wind. That was worse. Rommel doesn't overextend, doesn't commit unless it's worth it. He doesn't dig in and wait. He probes, retreats, reappears. You think you've pushed him back? No. You've just walked into the space he left behind on purpose. Your officers keep saying the tide is turning, that reinforcements are coming, that logistics are improving, that the Axis is on its heels. You want to believe it. But the last time you thought you had the upper hand, a column of panzers rolled through a ridgeline nobody thought was accessible, and now there's a pile of helmets behind the mess tent with names scratched off the roster. One day you're assigned to a supply run. Boring, you think, just fetch and carry. You roll out with 2 trucks, 3 men, and a vague sense of direction. Halfway there, you see the smoke. Black, wide, not fresh, but not old either. You crest a hill. What used to be an Allied outpost is now pieces. Shattered crates, burned tyres, shell craters the size of living rooms. No survivors, no enemies, just aftermath. You check your map. You were supposed to be here yesterday. A delay in orders saved you, or doomed someone else. They say Rommel was there, just passed through, took what he needed, left what he didn't. The outpost didn't stand a chance. No air support, no armour, just a few guys with rifles and the wrong coordinates. You don't sleep that night, not because of what you saw, but because you know that if he comes again, it'll be your turn. Some soldiers collect souvenirs, not from Rommel's men. No one touches their gear. Superstition, or maybe respect. You don't loot the fox, you survive him. The days grind forward. Rumours swirl. He's injured. He's dead. He's in Italy. He's in Cairo. Then his tanks show up again, like ghosts with engines. Every time you think he's gone, a new set of tyre tracks curves past your camp in the morning. You start watching the ridgelines differently, listening for engine sounds that don't match your side. You stop trusting your maps. You stop trusting the silence. Because silence out here? That's his favourite weapon. The pass is closer now. You're moving again. New orders, new lies, new ground to hold. And somewhere, not far off, the fox is already moving too. You're in position. At least, that's what they told you. Dig in and hold the pass, they said, like it was that simple. Like holding a choke point in the middle of North Africa against one of the most effective battlefield commanders in modern warfare was just another line item on a to-do list. You don't know what the plan is. Nobody does. There were supposed to be tank units covering the left. There were supposed to be anti-tank guns on the ridge. There were supposed to be air recon flights checking for movement. And yet, here you are, staring through binoculars with one cracked lens, trying to tell the difference between a dust cloud and a column of German armour. It starts with a sound, low, distant, not thunder, not yet, just a subtle growl, like someone shaking a metal drum in the next valley. Your gut tightens. You look around. No one says anything. No one has to. That's not wind. Then the radio crackles. Barely. A burst of static. A voice trying to say something. Maybe movement. Maybe incoming. Doesn't matter. The next sound is louder. Closer. Engine whines. Treads clanking. You know that rhythm now. That's armour. You grip your rifle. Silly, really. You've got 8 rounds and a clear line of fire to absolutely nowhere, but it's what you were trained to do. Dig in. Hold position. Engage when ordered. You wait for that last part. It doesn't come. The first shell hits half a mile up the road. A plume of dirt explodes into the air. Then another. Closer. Not accurate, not yet. But they're walking the artillery toward you, one range adjustment at a time. Someone yells, "Get down!" as if you weren't already on your stomach chewing gravel and panic. Then the line starts to unravel. It doesn't happen all at once. There's no siren, no dramatic battle cry, just motion. Someone gets up and runs. Maybe to reposition. Maybe just away. Then someone else. Then shouting. Then a truck tries to turn around on the narrow path and gets stuck. Another tries to reverse and backs into a field radio antenna. Sparks, smoke, screaming. And then the shooting starts. Not your side, theirs. MG-34s, light and fast, shredding the ridgeline like they're trimming hedges. You've never heard that many bullets in your life. Not from that close. Not that fast. They don't whine. They rip. You return fire. Sort of. You aim where you think they are. Fire twice. Miss. Reload. Forget to check your cover. Someone yells something. Could be your name. Could be grenade. You duck anyway. You hear a vehicle blow. Not see. Hear. Like metal collapsing in on itself. 1 second it's there, the next it's fire. You smell oil and cooked canvas, and something you don't want to identify. The order to fall back comes too late. By then, fall back is just another word for run. You grab your pack, but leave the spare canteen. Too heavy. You're not thinking straight. No one is. You move down slope, legs sliding on loose gravel. You hear bullets skipping off rocks behind you. Someone screams. You don't turn around. You couldn't help anyway. There's no formation now. Just bodies moving in every direction. Some toward the ridge. Some away from it. Some circling, like they forgot what they were supposed to be doing. You see a lieutenant screaming into a radio that's already dead. You see a jeep spinning in circles. You see 3 soldiers crouched behind a boulder that's not even waist high. You pass someone you know. He's holding his helmet to his head like it might do something. His eyes are wide, but he's not looking at anything. You grab his arm, shout. He blinks, nods, keeps running. And still the shells keep falling. One lands nearby and you hit the ground so hard your rifle smacks your teeth. Dirt rains on your back. You cough. Your ears ring. Your hands are shaking. You can't feel your left foot. It's there, but it feels wrong. Heavy. Like you left something behind. More vehicles clog the path. One bursts into flames. Someone tries to pull gear from the back and disappears in the blast. Another tries to climb onto a tank that's reversing and gets crushed between treads. You don't look again. Your boots slide into something wet. Not water. Not blood either. Just oil. Or fuel. Or both. You're not sure anymore. Everything smells like burning. Everything sounds like chaos. Then comes the air support. Yours? No. Theirs. Stuka's. You see the shadows first. Long, fast, unnatural. Then the scream. That dive bomber siren. Built specifically to cause terror. It works. They drop fast. Too fast. You don't even see the bombs until the ground shakes again. And you're thrown into a ditch that wasn't there a second ago. You lie there. Face pressed to earth. Breathing shallow. Can't see. Can't think. You blink. You cough. You wait. Then someone yells your name, real this time. You crawl up the embankment, rifle still in hand, even though it's jammed and you know it. You find your unit, or what's left of it, huddled in the shadow of a disabled truck. The officer's gone. The sergeant's missing a boot. A medic is trying to apply a bandage using a torn ration box and a strip of undershirt. You check the ridgeline. It's theirs now. Or it will be in 5 minutes. You don't need binoculars to know. The movement's too clean, too practiced. You're outmaneuvered, outgunned, out of time. Someone suggests falling back further. Another suggests holding here. No one agrees. Doesn't matter. You're already losing ground. So you run, not far, not fast, but away. Just enough to stay ahead of the next volley. Just enough to breathe. Just enough to realise the first real battle is over. And you lost. The pass wasn't held. The plan didn't work. The officer with the map never made it out. And Rommel. He's not celebrating. He's already moving to the next objective. You find shelter in a ravine. You sit. You check your rifle, still jammed. You unjam it, slowly, methodically. Your hands remember what your brain can't. And all around you, the dust settles on the broken, burning and bleeding remains of a plan that was never going to work. You made first contact. It went exactly how it wasn't supposed to. No one tells you how loud tanks are until it's too late to do anything about it. The first time one rolls past, you feel it in your spine before you hear it. It's not just the engine. It's the weight, the pressure of several tons of steel grinding over rock and sand like it's trying to flatten the entire war. After Kasserine goes sideways, everything breaks loose at once. There's no more front, just terrain now, contested hills, random patches of desert, abandoned equipment scattered like breadcrumbs, leading absolutely nowhere. You're not in formation. You're in survival. Tanks don't stop for you. They don't pause for instructions. They keep moving forward, or they stall and die. You've seen both. You saw one Sherman with its turret jammed at a 45-degree angle, stuck in a ravine. A crewman climbed out and immediately took a round to the chest. He didn't scream. He just collapsed like he already knew. Another tank spun in place. Not in combat, just confused. Driver couldn't see. Commander couldn't shout loud enough. The machine gunner was busy trying to load a belt of ammo that kept slipping through his fingers. Eventually the whole thing gave up and backed into a supply truck, crushing crates of ammunition no one had unpacked yet. You try to stay clear of the armour units, but it's impossible. You share the same roads, the same dust, the same broken chain of command that forgot to tell everyone where they were supposed to go. You're walking alongside trucks that don't belong to your unit. You're following tanks driven by guys you don't recognise. It doesn't matter anymore. And the trucks. Don't get romantic about them. These aren't sleek convoys gliding over sand dunes in perfect order. These are smoking, dented, overloaded steel rectangles, that squeak, rattle, and threaten to tip over every time they hit a bump. One of them swerves, trying to avoid a crater, and clips a tree that hasn't been alive in 100 years. The side panel pops off, and 3 crates of bandages tumble into the dirt. No one stops to retrieve them. Engines overheat, radiators blow, tyres pop. Half the fleet still runs on fuel nobody has. One guy pours water into the tank's engine compartment because he saw someone do it once. 5 minutes later, that tank is billowing smoke and listing to one side like it's seasick. Fuel trucks are top priority, supposedly, but they're also the first things targeted. You see one take a hit from a shell and go up like someone lit a match in a fireworks factory. You watch men run toward it. You don't know why. Maybe they thought someone survived. Maybe they left something important inside. You don't see them come back. The roads, if you can call them that, aren't roads. Just tracks in the sand carved by the last group that passed through. You follow them because they're there, even if they lead nowhere. At one point, your driver tries to follow a British convoy. Half an hour later, you realise they're headed in the opposite direction. By the time you turn around, you've lost the rest of your squad. There's a log jam at the base of a hill. 3 tanks stalled. 4 trucks idling in a line, their drivers shouting and waving like that helps. No one moves. No one can. A sergeant walks up, tries to direct traffic like he's running a school crossing. A shell hits the road 30 feet away, and everyone hits the ground except him. He just stands there blinking, then walks off like he's late for something. At this point, no one has orders, just guesses. You overhear one lieutenant say, "I think we're supposed to link with Baker Company." Someone asks where Baker Company is. The lieutenant shrugs. "That's the plan now. You're put on tank escort duty. That sounds like a real job." It isn't. It means walking next to the tank like you're its emotionally neglected sibling, carrying extra belts of ammo, and hoping the turret doesn't swing too hard and knock your helmet off. You walk 10 feet from a machine that might be targeted at any second, listening for the sound of enemy fire, and trying not to trip on your own shadow. Then the real chaos hits. You round a bend in the trail and find what used to be a motor pool. It's not anymore. It's fire. Truck frames melting. Ammo cooking off in rhythmic pops. Sand turned black. The air smells like fuel, metal, and roasted canvas. Bodies litter the edge of the wreckage, some whole, some not. You get yelled at to secure the perimeter. You don't know where that is. You pick a direction. You and 4 others set up behind what used to be a supply truck. You check your rifle. Still functional. Clip half full. You reload without thinking. Then you hear the clank again. Not your tank this time. German. Different engine note. Sharper. Angrier. You freeze, then duck. The Panzer comes into view like a shark fin on land. It doesn't see you. Or it doesn't care. It rolls through the wreckage like it's inspecting the damage it caused, and then keeps moving. No one fires. You don't breathe. 10 minutes later, another American tank comes rolling down the path. The commander waves. He asks if you've seen any movement. You point. He nods, thanks you, and trundles off toward the last known location of the Panzer. You never hear from him again. There's no line anymore. Just movement. Retreats that look like advances. Advances that feel like evacuations. Trucks peel off without warning. Tanks get stuck in gullies and abandoned. Men hop onto random transports just to get out of the blast zone. At some point, someone tries to set up a temporary HQ under a rocky overhang. Radios go up, maps come out, Then the signal corps gets hit by mortar fire and the radios go down again. The captain in charge walks in circles for an hour, holding a handset with no battery. No one tells him. Eventually you stop asking where to go. You follow the noise, the smoke, the sound of tyres spinning uselessly in sand. You help push a jeep out of a ditch and then jump in when the driver says he's heading west. You don't ask why. You pass another convoy, heading east. You wonder who's wrong, maybe both. You realise you haven't seen a medic in over a day. Just guys wrapping wounds with torn shirts and cursing between bites of dry crackers. The wounded ride in the backs of trucks next to fuel cans and spare tyres. If they die, they're carried out at the next stop and left under a tarp. If there's a tarp, there are more flares now. Red, white, green. No one agrees on what the colours mean. You fire a flare and a guy nearby tells you green means cease fire. Another says it means enemy sighted. A third says it means nothing anymore. Eventually, you stop trying to understand. Tanks keep rolling. Trucks keep breaking down. People keep shouting. And in the middle of it all, you keep moving. Because standing still gets you run over. Or shot. Or left behind. This isn't a battle anymore. It's traffic. With casualties. You were told there'd be air cover. They promised that. Right after they handed you a rifle that misfeeds and boots that blister, they told you not to worry because the skies belong to you. The Army Air Forces were up there, circling like guardian angels in olive drab, ready to swoop in and turn any German advance into smoking wreckage. That was a lie. There is no air cover. There is no circling squadron. There is no hum of friendly engines overhead. There's just silence. Until it's not. The first time you really feel it is mid-March. You're walking with what's left of your unit, trying to link up with someone who might have a working radio. The sun is boiling the top of your helmet, and the sand is baking your boots from the bottom. You hear engines, not trucks, not tanks, something faster, something meaner. You stop, look up, black crosses, low, fast, Messerschmitts, Stukas, BF 109s, take your pick. You don't get time to identify. They scream overhead like they're angry the ground is still intact. You dive into the dirt, everyone does. There's no protocol, no coordination. You just hit the ground and try not to be taller than the nearest rock. The bombs drop. You don't hear the first one land, just feel it. Like the ground got punched from the inside. Then the second. Then the third. Sand explodes into your face. You taste fuel. Your ears ring like church bells, and your ribs vibrate like they're trying to escape. Then comes the gunfire. Not from the ground, from above. Strafing runs. Machine guns chewing lines through the convoy. You see a truck fold in half like paper. A man disappears behind a red mist. Another runs with his hands over his head like that ever helped. You were told flak guns would be set up, that there'd be anti-air batteries positioned around every critical road and supply point. That was another lie. You've seen exactly one anti-air gun since you got here, and it was mounted backwards on a half-track with a busted axle and no ammo. The planes don't just hit you once. They circle, they come back, they loop around and strafe again like they're practicing. And they are. You're the practice. You finally hear one American fighter overhead. Just one. It zips in, takes a pot shot, then disappears like it got lost and panicked. The Germans don't even react. They just keep making passes until someone blows a tyre, someone loses a limb, and everyone else forgets what direction they were walking in. There's no hiding from them. The desert is open. There are no trees, no buildings, no shadows. You dig into the dirt like an animal, curl up next to a stone, pray your pack looks less interesting than someone else's. You don't fire, you don't run. You just lie still and hope the sky forgets you. After it's over, there's quiet, not peace, just the absence of screaming. You crawl out of your hole and check your limbs. They're still attached. Someone near you isn't so lucky. You hear them breathing, but it's not rhythmic, not normal, just wheezing like air leaking from a tyre. You call for a medic out of habit. No one comes. You gather the wounded. You stack the wrecked gear. You move the bodies. That's air support now. Shovels and stretchers. No one mentioned revenge. That would require someone to aim at. Later, a report circulates. Command says they couldn't scramble fighters in time. Maintenance issue, fuel delay, weather. Pick an excuse. There's always one. You hear someone say the Luftwaffe is overstretched too, that they're desperate. You nod like you believe it, even though you watched one fly low enough to see the pilot's goggles. You don't blame the pilots. You don't blame the brass. You don't even blame the enemy. You just look up and wonder how you ended up in a war where the sky itself wants you dead. From then on, every engine overhead is a threat. You hear buzzing and freeze. You hear a high-pitched whine and your stomach turns. A truck backfires and 4 guys dive under it. Someone starts sleeping with their helmet strapped tight, even in the dirt. Another guy paints "Air, cover my ass" on the side of his gear in charcoal. You laugh, once, then stop. It's not funny anymore. You're issued smoke grenades, supposed to be for cover. You use them to signal retreat. Doesn't matter. No one's watching from above. Not from your side, anyway. Command keeps saying the planes are coming. That air superiority is close. That the skies are turning. Maybe they are. But not here. Not now. Not over this patch of dirt and shattered steel. You keep moving. Because staying in one place gets you noticed. And getting noticed gets you strafed. So you walk with your head down, your rifle loose, and your ears tuned for propellers. The desert's bad, but the sky? The sky's worse. Retreat is a word they use in books. It suggests order, structure, a decision. You picture an organised fallback, men moving in tight lines under covering fire, officers shouting commands that actually mean something. That's not what happens here. Here, retreat means panic. Retreat means whoever yells the loudest gets followed. It means boots scraping sand, trucks reversing into ditches, and soldiers grabbing whatever gear they can carry without slowing down. It's not a manoeuvre. It's an escape. It starts with a whisper. Someone saying, "They're through the ridge." Then it's shouted. Then it's confirmed by a guy with a radio pressed to his head like he's trying to squeeze the truth out of the static. Then you hear it for yourself. Gunfire. Close. Too close. That low, choppy rhythm of German machine guns and the sharper cracks of rifles coming from somewhere they absolutely shouldn't be. You look at your officer. He's holding a map upside down and blinking like the sun's suddenly too bright. You ask what to do. He says, "Hold position." Then someone else yells, "Fall back!" And 5 people immediately start running. You hesitate. And then you run too. The trucks are already full. Doesn't matter with what. People, crates, wounded, food, rifles, helmets. One is overloaded and still trying to turn around in a space barely wider than a bathroom stall. The wheels spin. Sand flies. The axle groans like it's dying. Someone bangs the hood with a helmet. That helps nothing. You're on foot. Most of you are. The ones who aren't are screaming at the ones who are to make way. But there's nowhere to go. The road's too narrow. The flanks are loose sand and jagged rock. A jeep tries to cut around the side and flips. You see the driver roll twice, then crawl out and limp in the wrong direction. A line falls apart fast. Formations dissolve. Ranks blur. You see engineers with rifles. Clerks dragging ammo boxes. A lieutenant helping carry a guy who probably died 15 minutes ago. Someone's yelling into a field phone that hasn't worked since yesterday. Someone else is just laughing. You try to stay with your unit, but they're gone in the dust cloud. You find one familiar face and stick close. No time for conversation, just nods and movement. You keep low. You keep moving. Your rifle slaps against your hip with each step. You feel it like guilt. The enemy isn't charging like a movie. There's no line of silhouettes on the horizon. It's worse than that. They're just behind you. Somewhere. Always. Every time you stop to breathe, you hear gunfire where you were 5 minutes ago. Every time you look back, something's on fire. You pass a truck that's still idling, engine rattling, driver dead behind the wheel with his face split open from shrapnel. No one stops. Someone climbs in, pushes the body out, and drives off without even closing the door. A medic screams for help. He's got a man on a stretcher, and no one answers. You want to. You slow down. You even reach out. Then the next shell lands 20 yards away, and you dive so hard your ribs feel like they broke. When you look up, the medic is gone. Or maybe he never existed. The terrain's a nightmare. The pass funnels everyone into a single exit point, one road leading west, uphill and exposed. It's backed up for a mile, trucks idling, men crouched behind tyres. Some just sitting down in the sand like it's all too much now. Orders come down, supposedly. Fall back to the secondary ridge, regroup at checkpoint 3. But no one knows where checkpoint 3 is, and the secondary ridge is currently being shelled into powder. So instead, everyone improvises. You hear phrases like, hold this line, and cover the withdrawal, but those guys disappear before they explain who's doing what. You pass a mortar team, packing up like they're late for a train. They drop one round and it fires off into the air, completely unarmed. Lands with a thud. No explosion, no effect. They don't notice. Eventually you stop running and start staggering. Your legs don't move the way they used to. You're not tired anymore. You're past that. You're just moving because it's the only thing left to do. Your gear weighs more than you do. You left your pack behind an hour ago, didn't notice. You reach a rise, look back. It's hell. Vehicles overturned, supplies burning. Trails of black smoke climbing into the sky like accusations. You can see scattered dots moving. Men, small groups. Maybe a tank limping sideways with a tread blown off. You don't see any enemy, but they're there. You feel them. You sit for a second. Just a second. Long enough to catch your breath. Take a sip of water that tastes like tin and filth. Your hand is shaking so bad, you spill half of it. You don't care. Then someone runs past and shouts, "Keep moving! They're cutting around." You stand, you move. Again. It's not a retreat. It's a stampede. A flood of uniforms, boots, broken gear, and scrambled thoughts. There's no direction. No control. No pause button. At one point, you see two officers arguing over who's in charge. One of them draws his sidearm. The other laughs. You don't wait to see how it ends. You find a group gathered behind a low ridge. Some are setting up a defence. Sandbags, barbed wire, a machine gun with a bent tripod. You join them. Not because it's smart, just because it's something. You ask where the command post is. Someone shrugs. Someone else says, blown up. Then no one talks for a while. You lie down in the dirt, rifle across your chest, ears ringing from 2 hours of gunfire and shouting. You retreat like this a few more times over the next 48 hours, each one less organised than the last, each one further from wherever the front was supposed to be. Eventually someone stops calling them retreats. They're just movements now, backwards. At some point, you're told to dig in, again. Not because anyone knows where the front line is, but because digging feels like action, feels like defence, feels like doing something instead of just running and hoping. So you dig. Your shovel is dull, bent, short. More like a suggestion of a shovel than an actual tool. The handle splinters halfway through the second scoop, and you keep going anyway. The sand fights back, loose at the top, like sugar, then suddenly packed like cement the moment you think you've got momentum. You carve a shallow depression and call it good enough. It isn't. There's no science to it. No training that applies anymore. You just dig a hole your body fits into and hope it's deep enough to convince shrapnel to pick someone else. You watch the guy next to you struggle with his own foxhole, muttering curses through gritted teeth, scooping with his helmet when the shovel breaks entirely. It's hot, then cold, then hot again. You sweat through your shirt, then shiver as wind blasts grit into your eyes. You blink through it, spit out sand, and keep going. There's sand in your gloves, sand in your canteen, sand inside your rifle, even though you wrapped it in cloth before you started digging. Eventually, you stop digging. Not because the hole is done, just because your hands stop cooperating. You lie back inside it, staring up at a sky that doesn't care what you're doing. You adjust the edges, try to smooth it out. It's still too shallow. You know it. Everyone knows it. But there's nothing left in your muscles to make it deeper. Night comes fast out here. 1 second you're still squinting at the horizon. The next, you can't see your own boots. The desert doesn't go quiet. It changes. Every sound feels closer. Every breeze sounds like footsteps. You lie in your hole with your rifle across your chest, and your heart thumping just loud enough to convince you something's moving nearby. The fear isn't cinematic. It's not dramatic. It's boring, lingering, a low hum under your skin that never shuts off. You don't panic. You just lie there, trying not to breathe too loud, trying not to move too fast, trying not to blink too long in case something changes while your eyes are closed. You listen to footsteps that aren't there, to whispers that turn out to be wind, to distant engines that stop for just long enough to make you think they found your coordinates. You don't sleep. You drift. Eyes half open. Brain stuck between alert and shut down. A shell lands somewhere nearby, and you barely flinch. You're already lying in the hole. That's all you can do. You close your eyes and count the seconds between blasts, like it's a game that you're definitely losing. The guy in the hole next to you mumbles in his sleep. Something about home. Or chow. Or maybe nothing at all. You try not to listen, because it feels like spying. But there's no privacy in war, not even in fear. Someone moves along the trench line. Slowly. Carefully. You don't know if it's one of yours. You don't ask. You just grip your rifle tighter and wait for them to pass. They do, eventually. You never see their face. You forget what time it is. Doesn't matter. The sky is still dark, and the dirt is still cold, and your foxhole still isn't deep enough. You remember being told that foxholes save lives. That digging in keeps you alive. No one mentioned that they fill with sand every time you shift. That the wind carries half the desert into your mouth every time you exhale. That eventually the walls start caving in, like even the ground once you've gone. By morning your hole has shrunk. It's shallower than when you started. Your knees are sore from bracing. Your back aches from curling tight. Your hands are numb. Your face is coated in a layer of dirt that flakes when you blink. You sit up and brush yourself off. Doesn't help. The sand's still in everything. In your ears. In your ammo pouch. You pull your helmet off and a small pile falls into your lap. You laugh once, like someone told a joke, and it took you all night to get it. And then you hear the rumble again. Engines. Close. Maybe American. Maybe not. You duck back into your foxhole without thinking, like it's a reflex now. The guy next to you is already awake, staring at nothing, his face hollow, his fingers tapping his helmet like he's counting down something you can't hear. The day begins the way the last one ended. No orders, no clarity. Just the knowledge that you're still here, still in your hole, still pretending it'll help. You stand, stretch, feel your joints protest. You consider deepening the foxhole. You don't. It won't matter. The wind kicks up again. You pull your scarf over your mouth, spit, adjust your helmet, check your rifle, and dig in for another day of waiting. You're not sure what's worse, being shot at by the enemy or being shot at by people who are supposed to be on your side. Friendly fire. That's what they call it. A clean phrase. Sterile. Padded with the kind of language that looks good in reports. Accidental engagement. Mistaken target identification. But out here, it doesn't feel clean. It feels exactly like the other kind of fire, except you don't get the consolation prize of blaming the bad guys. It usually starts with confusion. Of course it does. You're tired. You're dirty. You're in a position nobody briefed you on, under a sky that doesn't care what uniform you're wearing. You move at dawn. So does the other unit. Problem is, no one tells either of you that you're converging on the same patch of scorched earth from opposite directions. You're crouched in cover, eyes up, waiting for movement across the ridge. You see it. Shapes. Not clear. Not slow. Just enough detail to know someone's there. You hear the command. Fire. And so you do. It's the same training you've had since basic. Aim centre mass. Squeeze. Don't yank. Fire in bursts if you can. You're doing it right. You feel the recoil. Hear the report. Smell the cordite. Then someone near you yells, "Cease fire!" But it's too late. Everyone's shooting now. Everyone thinks they're shooting at the enemy. Until someone stumbles forward. Arms up. Helmet off. American! You freeze. They're waving something. Probably a scarf. Or maybe their undershirt. Doesn't matter. One guy's already hit. Another crawls back behind a dune and disappears. You don't know if he's alive. You can't move. No one says anything for a few seconds. Just breathing. Just shock. Someone finally stands. Rifle down. Palms out. You recognise the unit patch. You recognise the face. You shared a cigarette with that guy 2 nights ago behind a supply truck. Now he's bleeding from the thigh and trying to stay upright long enough to ask, "What the hell was that?" There's no answer. You want to say "I didn't know." You want to say "we were told this was Axis held." You want to say anything that sounds like an explanation. But all you manage is, "They didn't tell us." That's the common phrase now. The fallback line for when you shoot your own. They didn't tell us. Not who was where. Not when they'd be moving. Not what path they'd take. Not what signal flares meant what. You've seen green flares mean whole position, enemy sighted, and once, I'm out of cigarettes. You carry a signal mirror. You've never used it. You're too afraid someone might see the flash and decide you're the enemy. You tried tying white cloth to your bayonet once. It blew away before the wind even picked up. One time you hear gunfire behind you. Close, urgent, the kind that makes your stomach drop. And you turn to see a US half-track firing toward a group of your own riflemen crossing a ridge. They drop. Fast. A guy with binoculars waves and screams. The half-track stops firing, engine still running, like it's deciding whether to apologise or keep moving. It keeps moving. Later, you see a map. Someone hands it around. You trace your unit's path with a grimy finger, trying to understand how you were in a fire zone meant for artillery. Then someone else points out that the map is last week's. The new one got lost, or destroyed, or never arrived. You start to recognise the sound of your own mortars, the thump of American-made artillery. It doesn't comfort you. It just makes you more nervous. You've had shells land too close. A forward observer marked the wrong hill once. You were sitting under a camo net when the first one hit. You don't remember ducking. Just the dirt in your mouth, and the scream of someone who didn't get lucky. Later, you watch a jeep speed past with a wounded man in the back. His leg is gone. Not from German fire. From a misfire on your own, what fuffy it. They bandaged what was left with a tourniquet and a prayer. Someone says he'll be fine. You know that's not true. Every time you hear gunfire now, your first thought isn't, where's the enemy? It's, are they aiming at us? You hear stories, whole patrols wiped by friendly planes, pilots dropping ordnance on their own tanks because the marking panels were folded wrong, a forward unit shelled because someone flipped their helmet liner and it looked like a German design from above. That's all it takes. Tss. One guy paints US on the back of his helmet in big white letters. Another tapes a pack of Lucky Strikes to his rifle stock. Like that's going to mean anything to a gunner staring through smoke and scope from half a mile away. You get issued a coloured panel to wear on your pack. Orange, like a target. You're told it's for identification. You wear it for one day, then you bury it. There's a kind of silence that follows friendly fire. Not just the quiet after shooting. It's different. Guilt doesn't make noise. It just sits heavy in your throat, waiting for someone else to speak first. No one does. And when you bury the dead, there's no anger, no vengeance, just shame. You don't talk about it. You don't write about it. You don't even mark the graves. One guy etches a name into the stock of his rifle, that's all. They call it the fog of war. That phrase gets passed around like a salve, like maybe the weather is to blame. Like maybe, if you just had clearer skies, the bullets would know who to hit. You know better. You were there. You hear it all the time. Medic! Always shouted, usually more than once. Sometimes it echoes across the ridge, sharp and clear. Sometimes it's mumbled through bloody teeth, low and desperate. But it's always the same word. And most of the time, nobody comes. Because there aren't enough medics. There never were. What you've got is a few men per company, overworked, undersupplied, and moving constantly, if they're still alive at all. And most of the time, when someone yells, medic, the medic's already dragging someone else, or neck deep in another hole trying to pack gauze into a wound that shouldn't even be survivable. You're told to stabilise casualties. That's what they say. Apply pressure. Keep them calm. Wait for the medic. Like this is some well-oiled triage system with stretchers and morphine and white tents. It's not. You use your shirt, your canteen, a piece of ammo pouch strap if you're desperate. You see a guy take shrapnel to the leg. Clean shot, relatively speaking. He's screaming. You crawl to him, rip off a sleeve, tie it above the wound. Blood soaks through immediately. You press your knee on it. He slaps you. You slap him back. He calms down. You yell for a medic. Twice. No answer. You wait 15 minutes. By then he's stopped talking. He's breathing. Shallow. You consider carrying him, and then you realise you don't even know where the aid station is. Or if there is one. The medics that do show up look worse than the wounded. Hollow-eyed. Filthy. Some wearing armbands, some not. Doesn't matter. Everyone knows who they are. They move like ghosts. No wasted steps. One hand already reaching for something before they kneel. You watch one patch up 3 men in 10 minutes. Tourniquets, gauze, morphine if he's got it. You hand him a field dressing. He doesn't say thanks. He doesn't speak at all. Just nods and moves on to the next guy. Another medic works on a soldier with a gut wound. He's young. Too young. Trying not to cry. The medic doesn't sugarcoat it. "You're going to hurt," he says. Then he packs the wound with a rag that used to be a sock and injects morphine so quick it's like a reflex. You ask where the nearest aid station is. He shrugs. "Last one got shelled." That's it. No follow-up. No recommendation. He moves on. You hear about guys pretending to be wounded just to get off the line. Doesn't happen much. Not because no one wants to, but because there's nowhere to go. No safe zone. No evacuation convoy waiting just over the hill. You fake a limp, you get ignored. You scream, you might get morphine. If you bleed, you might get help. If you bleed quietly, you're forgotten. The worst part is knowing you can't help. You can try. You can put your hand over a wound and whisper something useless. But you're not trained. You're not equipped. You can't stop a bullet from doing what it was designed to do. One guy gets hit through the chest. Not a clean shot. It collapses him. He's gurgling, eyes wide. You kneel beside him. He tries to say something. You lean closer. He says one word. Mom. Then nothing. You call for the medic anyway. Habit. He doesn't come. You don't talk about the ones who bleed out in foxholes. Not because it's taboo, but because it happens so often it's routine. 1 minute they're shaking, next minute they're still. You check the pulse just to make sure. Then you move on. You hear about the Germans, how their medics are organised, how they've got field hospitals set up, and a chain of care. You want to believe it's propaganda. You hope it is. Because if they've figured it out and you haven't, it makes you wonder what else they're doing better. Eventually, you stop yelling for the medic unless it's really bad. Legs blown off, arterial spray. Anything less, you handle it yourself. Even then, you ration your hope. You learn to look at a man and guess whether he's worth the effort. Not because you want to, because you have to. You help carry a guy once. 15 minutes under fire, dragging him by the collar, one arm over your shoulder, stumbling over rocks and sand. You make it to what's left of a medical tent, a canvas tarp draped between 2 ruined trucks. The medic looks him over, shakes his head. Too late. That's it. He pulls the morphine. You hold the guy's hand until his eyes stop moving. Then you get sent back to your unit. They try to rotate the medics. It doesn't work. Too few, too burned out. One refuses to carry a weapon. Another keeps a bayonet on his belt anyway. Not to fight, to cut fabric. Or maybe just to feel like he still has a choice. They teach you a phrase in training. Doc's got you. It used to mean comfort. Now it means hope you can still walk. There's a rumour going around about a medical truck that took a direct hit last week. Everyone inside died, including the driver. They buried it where it burned. No ceremony. Just a melted red cross and a few scorched helmets tossed on top. Eventually, you stop hoping for help. You stop shouting, "Medic!" every time a man drops. You wait, you check. You tie a bandage. Then you keep moving. You'd like to believe someone's coming. But you've seen the real story. If there even is a medic, he's already bleeding too. Command. A word that once meant something. A line drawn in the sand. Orders given and obeyed. Plans made and followed. Hierarchies respected. Not here. Not now. Not Kasserine. Leadership has collapsed into a lottery. Not because it's fair or random, but because it feels like the only way to describe what's left. Officers lost, missing, or dead. Non-coms overwhelmed, broken, or silent. And the rest? Trying to pick up the pieces without knowing what the picture was supposed to look like. Your lieutenant disappeared sometime yesterday. No one knows where. Maybe a mortar got him. Maybe he ran. Maybe he's still wandering with that bent map, trying to find a radio that works. No one asks. The sergeant took charge. At first, gave orders, shouted, rallied men. Then his voice got hoarse. Then he started repeating himself. Then he stopped altogether. You catch him once, staring at the ground, muttering something about, "This isn't war." A corporal tries to step up next. He's barely older than you. He doesn't know what to say. He tries "stay together," but no one listens. He tries "cover fire," but there's no ammo left. He tries "we hold here," but the ground is still shaking. Orders come down from nowhere and everywhere. Radio crackles sputter out half commands. Hold position. Retreat. Regroup. Advance. Fall back. Nobody knows which to follow, so they follow none. You hear stories from other units. Some have multiple officers killed or missing. Some are operating with private soldiers giving orders because everyone else is dead or gone. One guy says he was ordered to lead a squad despite never firing a weapon. He did his best. It wasn't enough. You see men arguing over leadership. Who's in charge? Who's next? Some start drawing lots. Dice, cards, coins. Whoever loses has to take the next patrol. It's a joke, not a funny one. At one point, you're assigned to a temporary command post. It's a pile of crates behind a half-collapsed building. The man in charge is a lieutenant colonel you've never heard of. He spends half his time trying to patch radios, and the other half yelling at a map that won't cooperate. He smells like sweat and old tobacco and desperation. During one briefing, he admits he doesn't know what the overall plan is. He reads a report that's dated 3 days ago. He makes a call to higher command that cuts out halfway through. Then he sighs and says, "We're making it up as we go." That's the best summary you'll hear. Your squad is left to improvise, to pick targets, to set up defences without artillery support or reinforcements, to march with no direction other than keep moving. You watch some of your best men break under the weight. Others grow silent, mouths shut tight against despair. You find yourself making decisions. Small ones. When to move. Where to hide. When to shoot. Sometimes they listen. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes you wonder if your judgment is better than whoever's disappeared into the desert. You learn to trust instincts more than orders, to read terrain, to listen to the wind, to watch for signs of the enemy before they appear. Leadership becomes survival, not rank. Sometimes a fresh officer shows up, bright-eyed, clueless. You don't have the heart to tell him the truth. That here, leadership is about holding on, making impossible choices, and hoping you're not the one who gets blamed when it all falls apart. When the command breaks down completely, you realise the real enemy isn't the Germans. It's the absence of command. The silence where orders should be. The void where trust used to live. And in that void, chaos breeds. The pass is still ahead. The enemy is still moving. You're still here, trying to lead, trying to survive, trying to make sense of a war with no leaders. There aren't a lot of options left out here. Not by this point. If you've made it this far, you've already seen too much and survived too little. You're not fighting anymore. You're existing. And every man around you is heading for one of three endings. Captured, killed, or crawling back to what's left of friendly lines. You'd like to think you've got a choice in it. But you don't. The ones who get killed usually don't know it's coming. That's the small mercy. A sudden crack, a thud, a shape falling wrong. Sometimes you don't even stop walking. You just glance over, recognise the boots, and keep going. You'll process it later. Or not. Some go quiet. A sniper shot, maybe. A mine. A fragment from a shell that wasn't meant for them. Doesn't matter. The noise is always too loud or too quiet. You don't react anymore unless someone starts screaming. And even then, you listen for how long the screaming lasts. Less than 10 seconds. He's gone. More than 10? Maybe not yet. Then there's the captured. That's the second option. The one nobody wants to talk about, but everyone imagines at least once when the shelling starts and the flank folds and you're lying in a ditch, trying not to breathe too loud. Being taken prisoner. At least it means you're not dead. But that's about all it means. You've heard stories. The Germans don't always shoot prisoners, but they don't coddle them either. You might get marched through the desert for hours. No water. No shoes if you were dumb enough to lose them. Maybe they feed you. Maybe they throw you in a truck. Maybe you sit in a tent surrounded by guards who don't speak and don't care. And you've seen guys taken. During the collapse at the ridge, 2 of yours got separated, went quiet on the radio. Later someone said they saw them being walked off, hands up, boots dragging. One had his helmet off, the other still had his dog tags clenched in his fist. No one's heard from them since. And you? You're in the third group, still breathing, barely. Not because you're lucky, just because you haven't run out of bad decisions yet. You're crawling, not always literally, but mentally, physically, spiritually. You're moving because stopping is worse. Because if you stop, the shelling catches up. The cold sets in, the fear tightens, and no one finds you. You've got blisters under your blisters, cuts that haven't closed, a cough that's half dust, half something worse. Your feet are swollen, your pack's nearly empty. You lost your spare socks a week ago. Your rifle has sand in the chamber again, and you don't even bother cleaning it anymore. You're not sure it'll fire when you need it to. You move from crater to crater, ridge to ridge, looking for a unit that might still function, for command that might still answer, for a medic that's not already working on someone worse off than you. You spend nights in holes that aren't yours, covered by scraps of tarp or nothing at all. The wind grinds grit into your skin like sandpaper. You haven't been dry in days. You haven't been warm in weeks. You think about faking a wound, just enough to get sent back, just enough to get a cot and a can of peaches, but there's nowhere to send you. No line of ambulances waiting to carry you away. No back area. Only more desert, more dust, more nothing. And somehow, even crawling, you're ahead of some. You pass others who didn't make it. Some with wounds, some without. Some just curled into themselves, too tired to keep going. They sit with their backs against wrecked trucks, helmets low, hands still holding rifles they'll never lift again. Others try to crawl too, literally. You saw one drag himself half a mile with a bandaged leg, teeth clenched the entire time. You offered to help. He refused. Said if he stopped, he wouldn't start again. You kept walking. One guy made it back to camp after being separated for 3 days. No pack, no weapon, just a blood-stained sleeve and a grin that didn't match his eyes. He sat down, drank half a canteen, and passed out mid-sentence. Slept for 18 hours. No one woke him. There's no line anymore, no map, no next objective. Just a slow pull toward the vague idea of safety. You head west, because that's where someone said the lines were stabilising. Maybe they are. Maybe they aren't. Doesn't matter. It's a direction. And when all you're doing is crawling, having a direction is everything. You pass checkpoints that don't exist. You ask for help and get shrugs. You sit in the back of trucks driven by people too exhausted to ask your name. You eat rations that expired before you were drafted. You find a can of peaches once. You don't share it. And every night you sleep with one eye open and one hand on your rifle. Just in case. Captured. Killed. Crawling. You haven't been captured yet. You're not dead. So you crawl. And you keep crawling. Because the only other option is to stop. The Battle of Kasserine Pass ends. Kind of. There's no trumpet, no flag planted, no clear turning point. Just a long, slow stop to the screaming. The smoke thins, the shelling slows. The survivors stop running because there's nowhere left to run. And somewhere up the chain, someone declares it over. They call it a lesson. Command starts using phrases like tactical review and strategic reassessment. They issue reports, long ones, charts, diagrams, carefully crafted language, not to describe what happened, but to make what happened sound like part of the plan, or at least like it wasn't their fault. You hear that valuable insights were gained, that the experience will inform future doctrine, that the army will adapt accordingly. It sounds important, almost noble, but you were there. You know better. You know what really happened. They sent in green troops with no experience, under officers who'd never seen desert combat, with radios that didn't work, maps that were wrong, and plans based on guesses. They told men to hold ground they didn't understand, told them air support was coming, told them reinforcements were en route, then blamed them when everything collapsed. Now they talk about fixing the command structure. They draw new lines on maps, promote different men, fire a few generals, reassign a few colonels. Like changing the names on the door fixes the building that's already burned down. One of those men was Fredendall, your commanding general. He ran the battle from 70 miles behind the front, inside a fortified bunker he had blasted out of rock. You never saw him, not once. He gave orders from underground, then blamed the troops when those orders failed. He got replaced. That's what they call accountability. Quiet, clean, without apology. You hear about Eisenhower, how he stepped in, how he reorganised the structure, streamlined reporting, moved Patton in. Everyone loves Patton. A real general, they say, tough, loud, knows how to win. They act like that's the beginning of a new chapter, but for you, it's just the epilogue of a disaster. They write about terrain challenges. They mention lack of coordination. They admit carefully that there were setbacks. You wonder if they'll ever admit how many men died because of those setbacks. Probably not. You've seen the numbers on paper. They don't include the stories. No one writes about the guy who bled out behind the sandbag line, waiting for a medic who never came. No one counts the men shot by their own side in the fog of friendly confusion. No one reports how many trucks were abandoned with wounded still inside. You hear about new training programs being implemented, more desert-focused exercises, improved interbranch communication, radios that might actually work, maps that match the terrain. It sounds good. Sounds like they're learning. But the men who needed those lessons are already gone, and the ones who survived don't need them now. You hear rumours about changes in supply logistics, that new rations are being tested, that someone's figured out how to pack artillery without losing half of it to bounced off crates. But you're still eating cold sea rations out of a dented tin with sand in your teeth, so you'll believe it when you taste it. Sometimes the brass visits, after. They tour the remains, they shake hands, say things like tremendous courage and deep sacrifice. They look at your torn boots and your cracked rifle and your blank stare, and they nod like they understand. Then they leave. You don't blame the army exactly. You just stop trusting it to get it right next time. The officers will learn lessons. The planners will tweak their strategy. The instructors at basic will get new material. But none of it will fix what happened at Kasserine. None of it will unburn the trucks, or unshell the pass, or pull the dead out of the foxholes. And none of it will change the truth, that the men on the ground knew what was happening long before the command did, that the lessons were obvious even then. They just weren't listened to. So yes, the army learned something, but not fast enough, and not from the right people. So here we are. You made it to the end. Sort of. There's no medal for this, no parade, no banner waiting on the other side of the ridge. Just your boots half worn through, your rifle scratched to hell, and your body somewhere between upright and undone. You didn't win. That's not what this was. You didn't die, though it was close, several times, and probably not over. You didn't go home either. Not yet. The desert doesn't let go that easy. But you didn't make it. Not really. Because whatever part of you showed up at Kasserine isn't what's walking away now. That version got left behind in a foxhole, under a truck, beside someone you never learned the name of. This battle didn't forge you. It didn't make you stronger. It just chipped away until there was less of you to carry forward. The army says you were tested. That's one word for it. Another word is thrown in, dropped into a fight that no one was ready for, led by officers who were guessing, supplied by a system that failed, and surrounded by chaos dressed up like command. And yet, they'll still find a way to call it a stepping stone. They'll say the failure was necessary, that what you went through helped pave the way for later victories. For Tunisia, Sicily, Italy, that this was the price for getting better. But none of that matters to you, because you weren't a symbol. You weren't a lesson. You were cold and afraid and tired, just trying to survive a day in a war that hadn't figured itself out yet. You were a name on a roster, a set of boots in the dust, a pair of shaking hands wrapped around a rifle that misfired at the worst possible time. You did your job, even when the job stopped making sense. You followed orders. Even when the orders led nowhere, you kept moving. Even when every instinct told you to stay down and disappear into the dirt, and still, you didn't make it. Not really. You're not the same. You won't be. You'll go on, maybe, to another battle, another patch of nowhere, another command post drawn on the back of a ration box. But the man who arrived at Kasserine is already gone. And whatever's left, well, congratulations. That's you now. That's it. That's Kasserine. A battle no one wanted to talk about, remembered only because of how badly it went. A place where plans fell apart, where men were outmatched, where learning the hard way cost lives that didn't get written into the official history books. You probably thought you could survive it, at the start, when it all seemed manageable. Boots on the ground, orders in hand, a rifle over your shoulder, and confidence in your chest. Now you know better. You wouldn't have lasted a day. But that's okay. Most people didn't. Now go to sleep, if you can. Tomorrow it's another war. Somewhere.